Nothing? Even then, it's
Try
cool.
not to.
Welcome to another episode of Scoring Compass Promotions Podcast. This one is very special because it features Christine Stanley from the Scottish Rite Learning Center here at the Windsor Masonic Temple. How long have you been doing this for? You became director
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And how did you come across the position before you became director? What did you know about this building? Had you been in here before?
So I started tutoring here in 2007, and I tutored off and on until I started in the director's chair. Yes.
How did you come to start tutoring here? How did you hear about the Learning Center?
So when we moved to Windsor in 2005, I was looking for support for my son, and I was directed here by the director of the Learning Disabilities Association, Bev Clark, and found out you had the center, found out there was a waiting list, and also that you needed more tutors, so I signed up to take the training.
And you've been a tutor for 7 years. 2007 you started, so you would have been a tutor for 10 years before becoming the director.
Yes.
And I guess we should get started with talking about what exactly the Scottish Rite Learning Center is. So tell us about the services that the Learning Center provides.
So this is Orton Gillingham is the multisensory reading approach that we use here, and it's a program designed for children with dyslexia to help them bridge the gaps in reading, decoding words, and also spelling.
You had mentioned that you originally became aware of this learning center because your son was required assistance.
Yes.
And you received a referral from his teacher, was it?
Actually, it was from the Learning Disabilities Association. They're the ones who told me about that center originally.
So where do you find most of the referrals for the Learning Center come from? Is it from teachers, parents?
All of that, and also our local psychologists who are doing the formal assessments for children. They also are aware of our program here and referring people here as well.
Now, once the referral happens and there's initial contact between the child with the potential disability, dyslexia, and the Learning Center, what happens from there? Do they go right into the tutoring process? Is there an assessment?
So typically they're waitlisted until we know for sure we have a space for them. Their assessment is reviewed, of course, to make sure that they're a good fit for our program because we are volunteer-based. We're very fortunate to have some tutors with a special ed background, but not everyone requires that. So we follow a very strict training process for the Orton Gillingham method that can be applied, but if children present with a lot of other issues, then we're not really equipped to manage that. So there is a bit of a screening process before the children are waitlisted. It typically takes 2.5 years for a child to progress through all 5 levels and graduate. And for the last few years, we've had about a 2-year waiting list in the process because we've had a limited number of tutors, really excellent tutors to be here, but we're always looking to expand.
Speaking of expanding with the number of tutors you have, if somebody wanted to become a tutor, how would they do so?
They can contact the Learning Center. We're always taking names for people to create an intake class. And in fact, I have 4 people waiting now for the next intake class. We will hopefully start in the fall.
Do you have the number for if somebody wants to call to get in touch about becoming a tutor?
Yes, I do. I don't remember it.
That's all right. No, we're gonna put it on this video. Okay. On the bottom, down on the bottom of the screen, we're gonna have, and also in the description, we'll have the contact information for the Learning Center. Either if you have or you know of any child who may need help with reading, or you're interested in becoming a tutor. Just look that way. You'll see it. What are some of the, you started tutoring here in 2007, your son was involved in the program, and you've been director for 3 years.
Okay.
What are some of the memories you have of your time here that you look back on?
So there are so many. I've tutored quite a few children, and it's a struggle to get them started, to get them to buy into the program. You see them coming in, they're not very confident. Sometimes they don't want to be here. But I always encourage them to give it 6 weeks, and usually in 6 weeks you can see a turnaround. And when things start to fall into place, you can see their confidence levels improve. I remember one of my students running out the door to read a book to their mom that was sitting in the lounge area. Never been able to read a book like that before, and it's heartwarming, those kinds of memories, for sure.
And obviously, to have been with the program for this long, from 2007, you must be very passionate about, the importance of education and the importance of reading and having those skills. How do you find that? How much of that passion do you find in your volunteers here, in the tutors, and in the Learning Center in general, the board of directors, things like that?
Everyone is very passionate about the program and the potential that the program has to help children with reading disabilities figure out the basics for reading and turn things around for school, right, to be successful at school.
Before 2007, did you have any involvement with either the Windsor Masonic Temple or Masonic temples in general? Do you know anything about Masons?
I learned more after I joined here. I didn't know anything about the Masons before I started volunteering here, and it's really been in the last 3 years as the director that I've learned a lot more about the history and the connections. There are 9 learning centers across Canada. We're very fortunate to have one here in Windsor. We have a very dedicated board of directors and volunteers who are Masons or families of Masons who regularly, daily, really come in and help us monitor and offer refreshments. And not all centers are that blessed. So we really do have a lot of dedicated people involved.
And how, I wanted to say this, so how have you found the support of the Masons of Essex County, both in terms of the volunteering here, the temple board, which is responsible for the building, and obviously the board of directors? I've attended graduations where we have, even Masons, if they're not necessarily volunteering here, they still come out just to support the Learning Center.
No, it's phenomenal. The support is absolutely phenomenal. It's the best.
We rarely, I've shown it on this podcast before, we have our blue room, which is where we hold the graduation, right? Mm-hmm. One of the few times you see it filled anymore is at those graduations. Mm-hmm. Do you ever keep in touch with any of the students that you tutored after they graduated? Do they ever contact you or any of the tutors to let them know what the progress they're making in school? Or
I know some of the tutors continue after, maybe they teach in the same high school, for example. They see the students or families on a regular basis. Every now and then I bump into somebody out in the community and we kind of catch up. But it's very nice actually to see them progress, graduate from high school, go on to post-secondary, things that maybe they were worried they wouldn't be able to do in the past, right?
Any plans moving forward for the Learning Center? I know you talked about there's always a need for more tutors and more volunteers, which check down below to get the information.
So we actually are this week starting 6 new tutors here. So we were very fortunate to have a cohort just do their initial training, and they're ready to start this week with new kids off the list. So very, very excited about that and shortening up the wait list a little bit.
And it's just, I can speak as one of the people who volunteers for the Learning Center. I never realized just how, dedicated your tutors are and how much training is involved. It's really a very it's a very well-run tutoring program in terms of the requirements to meet. Like you said, it's very strict.
It's sound. It's very sound, and you're supported all the way through your process of training. So it's 40 hours of class time, but it's stretched out over a couple of years, so you kind of learn just ahead of your students, right? And then 100 hours of practice teaching. And so all of the lesson plans are vetted by the trainer. There's a lot of support going through for materials, of course, but just to make sure everybody's on the same track and everything is sort of standard. And
you said that the average time somebody spends in this program for graduating before having the graduation ceremony and reaching their level of reading proficiency is about 2 to 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. Is that pretty standard? Is there a specific time and place, or is it at the student's progression?
It's at the student's progression. Some children move faster, others maybe need more time. Dyslexia is like a spectrum of severity, so and it also depends on what skills that children are arriving with. Sometimes we have kids in grade 7 or 8, they may have more language skills than a younger student coming in, so it is very individualized.
And I think that's a really important thing to emphasize is the individualized nature of it, because so many programs, right, it's like you have you're in for 6 weeks and then you're out or whatever it is. But here we're with the tutors are with the students for as long as it takes.
Yes. So we do have a maximum of 3 years, typically, and most of our students are able to reach at least level 4 by the end of that time. I lost my train of thought, sorry.
No worries. I know. Also, I know it's super expensive to come here, right? How much do you charge the?
It's free.
It's free,
it's
right?
Free. And actually, that's another part that I wanted to mention. The training is free for tutors. You're really just paying with your time. You're investing your time to become a tutor. All the resources are provided, and there's no cost to parents, of course. But the emphasis would be to provide the support that many families can't afford privately, right? So that's the whole basis for our program here.
Absolutely, it's terrific to see, the support coming from, Masons, and not just Masons, but from the Essex County District. All of the donations that are made to the center to keep it running from Masonic temples and individual donors, to make sure that this can be provided as a free service to any child who needs it.
And the fundraising that goes on with the keynotes that are designated for the Learning Center. I know there's bingos. There's an awful lot of behind-the-scenes work going on by the Masons to provide the funds that are needed to do what we do.
Did you have, I guess I always wonder, because I grew up with Masonry. Like my dad was a Mason and my grandparents, and my poor mom has nothing but Masons in her life, and now her son is one too. But, as somebody who didn't have a lot of involvement with it before 2007, has there been anything that's particularly surprised you about Freemasonry or even about the Masonic Temple?
So I think it's been a journey and of discovery for myself to find out that my mother's father was a Mason, and I didn't know that because he passed well before I was born.
What district? So, do you know, like, what area was he from?
Would have been in north of Kingston. I'm not exactly sure which branch he would have belonged to, but so that part was an interesting journey, and I still am exploring those details. I think that the support that I see for each other is really critical, and what I've heard when my grandfather did pass, the support that my grandmother received from the Masons too was ongoing, and I just think that it's a source of comfort within the community that is it's beautiful. Actually, you don't see that anymore. So I think it's a wonderful group of people, not just the Masons themselves, but the families and all of the other groups that extend from that. It's just a wonderful organization.
And speaking of wonderful organizations that are part of our Masonic family, the Learning Center has to be within that. I don't see as much of it as yourself or the tutors, because as a volunteer, right, I'm here, as all the volunteers are usually once a month to help with refreshments and the sign-in sheets, things like that. But even in that time and attending the graduations, to see the work that the tutors put in and the work that the students put in, and the just excitement of those who graduate, to be able to read at the proper level, and something we all take for granted, but isn't so easy necessarily if you have dyslexia or learning disability.
It's not, and dyslexia does not go away. So I feel like this is a tool for the toolbox, that they can use to help them through school and then later on in life. But you're right. It's I've lost my train of thought again. Sorry, you're gonna have to edit this.
This is fine. I lose my train of thought all the time. One thing Masonry teaches you, because you have to do a lot of speaking in your lodges, you just keep talking, and if you lose your train of thought, I'm used to just mumbling my way through.
Yeah.
Which you're probably the teacher in you, right? It's better to just take a moment as opposed to mumble through. But it's just such a terrific learning center and an organization, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of to have in this building.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of things for the community, but this is definitely something to be very proud of, and to be only one of 9 in the whole country.
Yes. Yeah.
Even considering our population base, when you hear there's 9 in the country, you would expect it to be in the larger metropolitan areas like Toronto, Vancouver, but to be able to sustain a learning center with only how many people are in Windsor? 220 or something. I think it just shows the dedication of everybody involved to keep it running, and certainly the dedication of yourself. You're probably one of the people who's here as often as I am, if not more often.
I think you live here.
I might. Don't tell the temple lord, but I might have taken some naps here or some. But yeah, you're here all the time, right? The school runs Monday through Thursday.
Yes.
And most students are here. What are the hours like in terms of a student?
So they're here 1 hour twice a week, so they can start as early as 4 and finish as late as 6:30. So we're open between those hours, Monday to Thursday.
And we obviously we have a separate room where there's refreshments and coffee for a parent or family member who's here with the students.
Yes, we encourage parents to stay because sometimes there's a little bit of anxiety here, or somebody may be having a bad day, but it's also it's a downtime for parents. Everything is so rushed these days, and this is actually a nice quiet place to sit and reflect or do some reading or catch up on things as well in that hour.
Absolutely. And we mentioned it's completely free for any student. It's free as well for tutors to be trained. The training is free. And everybody who takes part in terms of the tutors, the Masonic volunteers, we all have our criminal record checks. So safety has always been such an important thing, and something I've been really impressed by with the Learning Center and the Board of Directors. They really take the safety of everybody very seriously.
Right.
So with that, I think we got one tutor here already, getting ready to get started.
Yes, it's starting tonight, first night.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We should get him on here.
I don't know where he went.
Well, he's around somewhere. I just said safety and tutors disappeared. Oh, there he is. We found him. What's your name?
Rick.
Rick's over that way. You can't see him, but he is first day tutoring.
My first day at school, yep.
That's awesome. You want to come say hello? All right, he's coming this way. This is Rick.
Want to sit here?
Got to come to this side of the world.
Yep.
All right.
I should tell you what is happening. Poor Rick, he has no idea. This is a podcast. We're going to be putting this up. It's about Freemasonry in the Essex area. So this being such an important part of our temple and of Masonry in this area, I wanted to talk to Christine for all the work that she does.
Yep.
And first day, you got here early.
Yep.
You're already better than I was in school. How excited are you for your first day?
Well, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. Christine's going to take the lead today, and then Thursday I'm going to jump in, and I will be taking over from there. And
how'd you enjoy your training?
It was tough going back to school after 45 years ago.
40. I was going to say you're like 30 years old.
Well, close to 60. I'm 62, but I'm looking forward to doing this and I'm paying back. My granddaughter has dyslexia, and she leaps and bounds. She can read, and now she's a straight A student, and I just feel that we have to give back to the children.
Well, that's awesome.
Yep.
Congratulations on your first day.
Yep,
first day back at school. Did you bring an apple for?
No.
Well, you can bring that.
Pen and notepads. I'm ready.
You can bring that. On Thursday.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for stopping by and saying hi to the people. I can show you where to find this podcast when it comes out.
All right.
And to yourself, to Christine, to everybody, thank you to the Windsor Scottish Rite Learning Center for all the work they do with all of the students. And I think one might be coming up the stairs now. So with that,
Close to time. Yep.
see you guys next week.